So, Maya, for decades now, when we talk about depression, the immediate mental image for many, including myself, is often a chemical imbalance in the brain. It's been the dominant narrative, particularly with the rise of antidepressants like SSRIs.
Absolutely, Alex. That serotonin hypothesis has really shaped public understanding and clinical approaches for so long, suggesting that low levels of certain neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, are the primary culprits behind depressive symptoms. It's a very neat and tidy explanation, which probably contributed to its widespread acceptance in both medical and popular discourse.
And it makes sense on a surface level, right? You take a pill that increases serotonin, and some people feel better. So the logical conclusion is that they must have been deficient in the first place. But recent research, particularly a fascinating study from March 2026 out of the University of Queensland, is really shaking up that foundational idea, suggesting something far more complex is at play.
It's absolutely revolutionary, and I'm genuinely thrilled to dive into it today. This study proposes that depression might not be a simple chemical imbalance at all, but rather an energy crisis within our brain cells. It shifts our focus from the amount of neurotransmitters to the capacity of our cells to generate and manage the energy needed for all brain functions. It's a fundamental rethinking of the underlying biological mechanisms.
An energy crisis, that's a powerful metaphor, and it immediately conjures images of an exhausted system. The specific finding from this translational psychiatry paper, with its incredibly dense DOI of 10.1038, 41398, 026039004Y, is that young adults with major depression exhibit measurably lower ATP bioenergetics in their brain cells. Now, for those of us who haven't dusted off our high school biology textbooks recently, can you break down what ATP bioenergetics actually means?
Of course, ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, is essentially the universal energy currency of every single cell in your body, including your brain cells. Think of it like the power dollar that your cells spend to do everything from firing neurons and transmitting signals to building new proteins and maintaining their structure. Bioenergetics, then, is the study of how organisms manage their energy resources, specifically how cells convert food into ATP and then use that ATP to perform work. So, when the study talks about lower ATP bioenergetics, it's suggesting that the very process of generating and utilizing cellular energy is somehow impaired or inefficient in the brains of people with depression.
So, it's not just about having less energy, but the way the energy system itself is functioning. And the specific finding here is quite nuanced, which is important to highlight. The researchers actually found that at rest, cells in depressed individuals produced more ATP than healthy controls. But, and this is the crucial part, these same cells showed a reduced capacity to increase ATP production when faced with stress or higher cognitive demands. That sounds almost contradictory at first glance.
It's a really critical distinction, and initially it was quite a surprising observation for the researchers themselves, who had hypothesized lower energy production overall. What this suggests is that the cells in depressed individuals might be overworking or redlining even at baseline, constantly running at a higher energy expenditure just to maintain normal function. Imagine your car engine idling at 3000 RPM instead of 800 RPM. It's using more fuel, but it has less capacity to accelerate when you step on the gas because it's already working so hard. This indicates a profound lack of metabolic flexibility, where the cells simply can't ramp up their energy output when the brain needs to engage in demanding tasks like problem solving, emotional regulation, or even just sustained focus.
That redlining analogy really helps clarify it. It's not a battery that's simply half empty, but a battery that's constantly being overused, leaving no reserve for when extra power is truly needed. This immediately connects to the pervasive fatigue, brain fog, and lack of motivation that are hallmark symptoms of depression, doesn't it? If your brain cells can't generate extra energy for cognitive demands, those symptoms become a direct consequence.
Precisely, Alex. The brain is an incredibly energy-hungry organ, consuming about 20% of the body's total energy, despite making up only about 2% of its weight. Every thought, every emotion, every memory, every sensory input requires a massive amount of energy. Neurons need constant ATP to fire signals, to synthesize and release neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, to maintain their delicate electrochemical gradients, and to support all those complex cognitive functions. If this fundamental energy system is compromised, it's going to manifest as profound fatigue, difficulty concentrating, anhedonia, the inability to experience pleasure, and just a general feeling of mental and physical sluggishness. It's a direct biological explanation for those debilitating symptoms.
So, this study isn't just theorizing, it found actual measurable differences. The methodology involved collecting blood samples and conducting brain scans. However, we also need to apply our critical research lens here. The usable brain imaging data was from a relatively small sample size, 18 participants with MDD compared to a control group. That's a point the researchers themselves acknowledge as a limitation, stating that these results need replication in much larger cohorts.
You're absolutely right to highlight that, Alex. While the findings are exciting and point to a novel direction, the small sample size for the brain imaging data means we can't extrapolate these results too broadly just yet. It's an important initial discovery, a strong signal, but not yet definitive proof across the entire depressed population. Another crucial point for our listeners to consider is that many of the depressed participants were already taking psychiatric medications and often had co-occurring conditions like anxiety. These factors could potentially influence the findings, making it challenging to isolate the specific bioenergetic patterns solely attributable to major depressive disorder itself. When they adjusted for age and sex, some of the observed group differences even lost their statistical significance, which further underscores the need for larger, more controlled studies.
That's a really important nuance. It's easy for headlines to grab onto a dramatic finding without fully explaining the methodological limitations. It also points to the complexity of studying mental health conditions where comorbidity and medication use are very common, but even with those caveats, the direction of this research is compelling. And on the funding side, which we always like to mention, this study received support from the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and the University of Minnesota, which generally indicates a robust peer review process and legitimate scientific interest.
Yes, knowing the funding sources helps establish credibility and transparency. Now, let's zoom back out to the bigger picture. If ATP is so central, it really forces us to reevaluate the serotonin hypothesis that has dominated the conversation for so long. For nearly half a century, the idea has been that depression is caused by diminished activity in the brain's serotonin pathways, and this theory directly led to the development and widespread use of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs.
And it was a paradigm-shifting idea at the time, offering a seemingly clear biological explanation for a complex disorder. But, as you mentioned, recent challenges have emerged. A comprehensive umbrella review published in Molecular Psychiatry in July 2022 by Moncrief and colleagues really put the serotonin hypothesis under the microscope, and its conclusions were pretty stark.
It truly was a bombshell for many in the field. That review meticulously assessed decades of research and essentially concluded that there is no consistent or convincing evidence that depression is caused by or reliably associated with lower serotonin concentrations or activity in the brain. They looked at studies that measured serotonin and its metabolites, studies that intentionally lowered serotonin levels, and genetic research, and found no robust link supporting the idea that depression is a simple serotonin deficiency. For example, studies where healthy volunteers had their serotonin levels intentionally lowered didn't consistently induce depression.
That's a significant blow to the simplistic chemical imbalance model. If you lower the supposed deficient chemical in healthy people and they don't get depressed, it strongly suggests that the deficiency wasn't the root cause in the first place. This is where it gets tricky though, because while this research challenges the simple serotonin deficiency model, it's important to acknowledge what the serotonin hypothesis did get right, or at least how it contributed positively to the field.
That's an excellent point, Alex, and it's vital for our research framing guidelines to steelman both sides fairly. The serotonin hypothesis, even if oversimplified, played a crucial role in directing immense research efforts and, importantly, led to the development of the first generation of effective antidepressant medications. The SSRIs, which do help many people, it provided a tangible biological target when mental health research was often more focused on purely psychological or social factors. So it wasn't a total dead end, it was a stepping stone, albeit one that we might now be moving beyond. Some researchers also still defend aspects of the hypothesis, citing methodological flaws in the critical reviews or arguing that serotonin might play a more complex role in modulating mood stability rather than directly causing depression.
Exactly. Depression is undeniably a complex disorder influenced by a multitude of social, psychological, and biological factors, and reducing it to a single chemical deficiency was always going to be an oversimplification. But this leads us to the next big question. If depression isn't just about low serotonin, and if it's more about an energy crisis, why do SSRIs still work for so many people? This is where the plot thickens, because we can't just dismiss the lived experience of millions who have found relief through these medications.
This is where the new energy crisis perspective really offers a fascinating reinterpretation of how SSRIs might function. Traditionally, we understood SSRIs to work by blocking the reuptake of serotonin by neurons, essentially making more serotonin available in the synaptic cleft to transmit signals. They are selective because they primarily target serotonin. However, if serotonin isn't the root cause, then their efficacy must stem from a different, perhaps more fundamental mechanism.
So, what are these newer perspectives suggesting about how SSRIs might be interacting with our cellular energy systems, if not just directly correcting a chemical imbalance? Are they in some way indirectly addressing this energy crisis?
That's precisely what some emerging theories are proposing, Alex. One fascinating idea is that serotonin, when it binds to its receptors, might directly regulate cellular energy metabolism by activating mitochondria, which are, as we know, the cell's powerhouses. This suggests that SSRIs, by increasing serotonin availability, could indirectly enhance mitochondrial function, essentially boosting the efficiency of ATP production. It's not about having more serotonin for its own sake, but rather about serotonin acting as a signaling molecule that tells the energy factories to get to work.
That's a significant shift in understanding. It means serotonin isn't just a mood regulating chemical, it could also be a metabolic regulator. So, an SSRI isn't just topping up a tank, it's potentially improving the engine's efficiency. Are there other ways SSRIs might be impacting cellular energy?
Absolutely. Another compelling idea is that SSRIs might stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis over time. This is the process where cells create new mitochondria or improve the health and function of existing ones. If SSRIs can encourage the growth of more efficient power plants within our brain cells, that would fundamentally alter the cell's energy metabolism, leading to a more robust and sustainable energy supply. This isn't an immediate fix. It's a gradual foundational change which actually aligns well with the known delayed onset of action for SSRIs. They typically take several weeks to produce noticeable antidepressant effects, which would be consistent with a process like mitochondrial biogenesis rather than an instant chemical rebalancing.
That's a crucial point about the delayed onset of action. If it were a simple chemical imbalance, you might expect a faster response, similar to taking a painkiller. The fact that it takes weeks really supports the idea that deeper, more structural or metabolic changes are occurring. So, in essence, SSRIs might be generally stimulating brain energy, which then has downstream effects on mood and cognition.
Exactly. It's a broad energy stimulation, improving the overall metabolic health of the brain, and this ties into another key area. Neuroplasticity, antidepressants, including SSRIs, are known to support neuroplasticity, which is the brain's incredible ability to form new connections and pathways, adapt, and even repair itself. This process of creating and strengthening neural circuits is incredibly energy intensive. If SSRIs are enhancing cellular bioenergetics, they're essentially providing the fuel needed for the brain to undergo these beneficial structural and functional changes, helping it to adapt and recover from depressive states. It's like giving a construction crew more power tools and a steady supply of electricity to rebuild a house.
So, it's not just about getting more serotonin, it's about serotonin acting as a signal that kicks off a cascade of events, ultimately leading to better energy management and increased neuroplasticity, which then leads to an improvement in depressive symptoms. This reframing feels much more comprehensive and mechanistic than the older, simpler model. It also opens up entirely new avenues for treatment that go beyond just neurotransmitter modulation.
It's incredibly exciting because it shifts our paradigm. If depression is, at its core, a whole body metabolic condition with a significant brain energy component, then our therapeutic strategies can become far more diverse and targeted. Instead of solely focusing on adjusting neurotransmitter levels, future therapies could directly target mitochondria to help cells manage energy more efficiently. This isn't just about drugs either, It brings lifestyle interventions even more front and center.
That's a powerful statement. Whole body metabolic condition. So, what specific types of compounds or interventions are being investigated if we're looking to directly boost brain energetics?
One area of significant interest involves bioenergetic compounds. Take creatine, for example. It's well known in the fitness world for its role in muscle energy, but it also plays a crucial role in brain energetics. Creatine helps regenerate ATP, essentially acting as a quick energy reserve for cells. Research is already investigating creatine or its lipophilic analog, cyclocreatine, which is designed to cross the blood-brain barrier more effectively as potential antidepressants, especially for treatment-resistant depression. These are direct interventions aimed at the energy supply chain rather than indirect neurotransmitter modulation.
That makes perfect sense. If the problem is an energy shortage, then providing more efficient energy reserves seems like a direct solution. And you mentioned lifestyle interventions becoming more central. That's a crucial point because it empowers individuals with actionable steps.
Absolutely. If chronic stress is known to deplete cellular energy reserves by altering how mitochondria produce ATP, then lifestyle practices that directly support ATP production become incredibly powerful. This includes things like tailored dietary interventions, focusing on nutrient-dense foods that fuel mitochondria, reducing inflammatory foods, consistent exercise that boosts mitochondrial health and biogenesis, and effective stress management techniques like mindfulness or meditation. These aren't just feel-good add-ons, they become fundamental evidence-based components of a treatment plan directly addressing the underlying bioenergetic dysfunction.
This reframing also has profound implications for diagnosis, doesn't it? One of the biggest challenges in mental health is the subjective nature of diagnosis, relying heavily on self reported symptoms and clinical interviews. This new research suggests a potential for objective biomarkers.
This is perhaps one of the most exciting long-term prospects, Alex. The finding that the specific ATP bioenergetic patterns observed in the brain are also detectable in blood cells is nothing short of revolutionary for diagnosis. It opens the door to developing a potential blood test for major depressive disorder. Imagine a future where diagnosis could shift from being based solely on subjective questionnaires, which can be influenced by many factors, to more objective biological data. This would be a game changer for precision medicine in psychiatry.
A blood test for depression. That's truly groundbreaking. It could reduce diagnostic delays, minimize misdiagnosis, and alleviate some of the stigma associated with mental health conditions by providing a tangible biological marker. And it would definitely facilitate earlier intervention.
Exactly. An objective biomarker could facilitate earlier diagnosis, especially in young adults or those who might struggle to articulate their symptoms. This early intervention could lead to more targeted and effective treatments, potentially improving recovery rates and averting long-term negative outcomes. It also paves the way for a truly personalized medicine approach. This research emphasizes that not all depression is the same. Every patient has different biology, and each patient is impacted differently, meaning we could tailor treatments to an individual's specific bioenergetic profile rather than relying on a one-size-fits-all approach.
So, instead of just trying different medications until something sticks, a doctor might be able to say your bioenergetic profile suggests this type of intervention will be most effective for you. That's a huge leap forward. And it's not just about new treatments, it could also help us better understand why existing effective treatments work. For example, psychotherapy and electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, are known to be effective for severe depression. Could their efficacy also be understood through a mitochondrial or bioenergetic lens?
That's a brilliant question, Alex. It absolutely could. We know that psychotherapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy, helps individuals restructure negative thought patterns and develop coping mechanisms. This intense cognitive work requires significant energy. If therapy helps the brain use its energy more efficiently, or even subtly boosts mitochondrial function through adaptive changes in neural activity, that could be part of its mechanism. Similarly, ECT, while still not fully understood, induces controlled seizures which dramatically alter brain activity. Some research is already exploring how ECT might impact mitochondrial functioning and cellular bioenergetics, with mitochondrial function even being investigated as a potential biomarker for predicting treatment response to ECT. It's a way to unify our understanding of diverse treatments under a common biological framework.
This is really painting a picture of depression as something far more fundamental than a simple chemical imbalance. It's about the very operating system of our cells, and it also highlights the constant evolution of scientific understanding. What was a groundbreaking theory decades ago is now being refined and challenged by new evidence. It's the things I know nothing about principle in action, where the more we learn, the more we realize how much more there is to discover.
Exactly, Alex. It's a testament to the scientific process, constantly questioning, observing, and refining our models of reality. This energy crisis hypothesis doesn't replace the importance of neurotransmitters entirely. Rather, it suggests a deeper, more upstream mechanism. Neurotransmitters are still crucial for brain function, but their synthesis, release, and reuptake are all incredibly energy dependent processes. So, an energy crisis could manifest as neurotransmitter dysregulation, making them a symptom rather than the primary cause. It's like saying the lights are out in a house because the fuse is blue, but the real problem is that the power plant isn't supplying enough electricity to begin with.
That's a fantastic analogy. It moves the problem further up the chain of command, so to speak, and it provides hope for new, potentially more effective, and certainly more personalized treatments. It also shifts the narrative around depression from a purely brain disorder to something that might be intricately linked to overall cellular health and metabolic function, which is a much broader and more empowering perspective for individuals.
It really does, Alex. It encourages a more holistic view of mental health, where diet, exercise, stress, and sleep aren't just general wellness recommendations, but direct interventions into the bioenergetic health of our brains. If we can optimize the energy production and management within our cells, we might be able to provide a more robust defense against the onset of depression and a more effective path to recovery for those who are struggling. It's a truly exciting frontier in mental health research.
So, to recap, the University of Queensland study from 2026 suggests that young adults with depression aren't necessarily running on low serotonin, but rather their brain cells are redlining at rest, struggling to ramp up ATP production when faced with mental demands. This points to an energy crisis rather than a simple chemical imbalance. This idea challenges the long-standing serotonin hypothesis, which has been further scrutinized by reviews like the 2022 A Molecular Psychiatry paper.
And crucially, we discussed how SSRIs might still be effective for some people not by simply correcting a serotonin deficit, but by indirectly influencing mitochondrial function, stimulating biogenesis, or supporting neuroplasticity, all energy-intensive processes. This new understanding opens up incredible avenues for novel treatments like directly targeting mitochondrial health with compounds like creatine and elevates the importance of lifestyle interventions. Furthermore, the potential for objective diagnostic blood tests based on these bioenergetic patterns could revolutionize how we identify and treat depression, moving us towards a truly personalized medicine approach.
It's a powerful reminder that science is always progressing, and what we think we know today might be fundamentally reevaluated tomorrow. Thank you, Maya, for shedding light on such a complex and incredibly important topic. This has been truly illuminating.
My pleasure, Alex. It's been a fascinating discussion, and I'm excited to see where this research leads in the coming years.